Do, 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 do. Much has changed as Monolith has headed towards its twilight years, but the story continues.
The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Do, 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 do. If you haven't figured out yet that that's why I call it Monolith, then, well, glad you could finally play some catch-up. Now let's put some real lights back on and check out some of the toys. So some idiot gave me COVID again, and I've been stuck home for the last couple of days on isolation. Whatever. So I figured, let's play a little catch-up with some things I've been meaning to do anyways, with the COVID hero pay that was disbursed to people in Connecticut, as well as birthday wishes from folks, and your support through the ads and stuff, and all the various ways that YouTube lets things monetize. I think we can buy a few things and have a little bit of fun. Previously, a lot of stuff was grotesquely overpriced to where it would be horrendously irresponsible for me to go buying stuff to make tech videos. But some of that is finally starting to cool down a bit. So I figured, let's have some fun! Some of you folks already know that I swapped out the power supply and the graphics card in Monolith, and some of you people have been scratching your heads as to why. Well, as Bugs Bunny once said, they don't know me very well, do they? So Monolith has been hitting some limits in the CPU department, and let's be real here. Yes, this thing's running off an i7 from the Skylake days, but the architecture of the i7 from back then is the equivalent of a Core i3 nowadays. Yeah, I finally have the computer that all the nerds said I should have built all those years ago. Don't put so much emphasis on the CPU, put it all on the GPU, blah, 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 blah. Oh boy, how things have changed since the middle of the last decade. And all these years later, now the haters can finally leave me alone. Except they probably forgot their own arguments from way the heck back then. No worries, I have podcasts that document all of that. Anyways, it's not really worth it to build a new system right now, because AMD and Intel just gets weirder and weirder, and I think the sweet spot is going to be after the Ryzen 8000s get released, and the 7000s can go on clearance. So I'll decide, do I want an 8000 system or a 7000 hippie chip system to start to go Ryzen when the 8000s release. See if I can catch some hardware on clearance. Because right now, motherboards are just too expensive. The technology's still a little too new for my tastes. So I figured get some transferable upgrades to take with me to the next machine, like this RTX. And this nice RTX card, RTX 3060 Ti Asus. No, it's not even spinning the fans because it's not doing anything right now. But this 3060 Ti finally gets me an Ampere card, and it's a monster of a card. I actually had to upgrade the power supply because of it, because the transient spikes were taking down the system. So we went from this 5-year-old Corsair 750 with, that for modular cables to this beast. Corsair RM1000X, and there's a newer one that actually shifts everything over to the backside, but obviously I couldn't put that in here because my case doesn't support it. It has a plate along the back. Newer cases don't. So if you want to hide your cables even more, there's Corsair power supplies that shift everything back here somewhere and stuff like that. And look at all those cable options. Technically, this comes with enough modular cables for those huge 4000 series cards, so you can have 3 video card plug cables going to your card instead of using the second connector on these things. So I figured from an electrical standpoint, spread out the current between multiple conductors instead of have like 2 cables instead of 2 plugs from 1 cable to help spread the load with all the transient spikes that this thing has when it's going nuts trying to deal with Hogwarts Legacy, which was completely taking down this thing. So it just goes to show what has happened in the last 5 years with power, handling transient spikes, the importance of having clean power for your system, and having some room to grow. And we've got the Killawatt set up, so we will check out what kind of numbers we're pulling right now even before we swap in an SSD. But let's not go spoiling anything here. First, and I'm going to put this in the spreadsheet to expense this against the ad revenue. The RAM was flaking out when I was trying to install the new graphics card, and I don't have any DDR4 if I want to get like a DDR4 era Dellasaurus down the line. Plus, I screwed up the RAM upgrade to 32 gigabytes. Back when I did that, I wasn't paying attention, so I only upgraded the system to 24 gigs by mistake. Hogwarts Legacy, at its top settings, has 32 gigabytes as the recommended RAM. So what do we have here? We have 32 gigs of Ripjaw's DDR4, and it's actually one speed faster than that stuff. I don't know if the motherboard will support it, because it only supported 2133 back in the day, and this is 2400. Regardless, 32 gigs, brand new, even if new old stock, sticks. Put them all in, get this thing to 32 gigs, cap the RAM in this thing, although it could go to 64 if I really wanted to, and basically have some RAM available in case some of the sticks cook, or we have, of course, a Dellasaurus down the line that needs DDR4. So right now I only have DDR3. And also, I figured let's try out this 2TB Silicon Power SSD as a replacement for the games drive to get one of the mechanical drives out of this system for good. The 2TB games drive, get rid of one of the mechanical drives and leaving only the data array as the last holdout of mechanical hard drives in the system. SSDs have been dropping in price, especially if you don't get glamorized brands like Samsung and whatnot. So if you're like the Tech Syndicate folks and you love your smaller indie companies like A-Data and stuff, things have been getting more affordable. Don't know how reliable this is, so I'm going to test this out with games that I can easily reinstall through Steam by putting something back in here if something cooks. Today's games drives only literally store game installations. Save games, screenshots, all that stuff goes to your My Documents folder nowadays. So it'll be a good way to test out this brand. Put some games on it and see how it performs. Okay, time to dig into this thing. The problem is that this is going to be kind of boring because the old RAM and the new RAM pretty much look the same, so you're not even going to be able to tell that I did anything. Just take my word for it. I'm taking the fan off and swapping all these and putting 4 brand new RAM sticks in there. Hopefully there aren't any issues. New stuff is in, all shiny and new, and the fan's half-ass attached in case it doesn't work. But I gotta show you the empty things or you're gonna say I'm faking it because everything on the internet is fake. I don't know, let's see what happens. If we get a beep, it's good. Anything? The drives start. Give it about 20 seconds. It works! First try! Unlike the stuff that came before it. Woohoo! I guess RAM just gets old or something. Yeah, I had like sticks of RAM flaking out if I moved things too much in the case before. Don't know what happened with that. Either way, the processor doesn't hardly have any cooling right now, so I better put this camera down and get that fan on. Okay, your ultimate proof that Windows started correctly. Do not mix memory kits. Memory kits are sold in matched kits that are designed to run together as a set. Mixing memory kits will result in stability issues or system failure. Oops. Well now, I've finally read the directions all these years later. Whatever.
Epic fail.
And one of the fun things, of course, about these Ripjaw clamshell things is I can put RAM sticks in them for storage. So now I finally have some DDR4 available if I mess with another Dellasaurus that's DDR4 era or something like that. Or if one of these sticks fries for whatever reason. Alright, next up. Silicon Power SSDs. It's one of those Amazon brands, so I don't really trust it. So I'm just going to try one of these out with a games drive, replacing the games drive and getting one of these mechanical drives out of the system. So Silicon Power is one of those Amazon brands. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, who knows. But I've been using all Samsung stuff since the last Crucial Micron SSD that I had kind of died on me. So let's see how this goes. So how are we going to transfer the data? Well, it just so happens that people call me old-fashioned, but there's some practicality to it. I have an optical drive in Monolith for playing Blu-ray movies, as well as burning BDRE discs and BD-ROMs for data backup to the tune of 25 plus gigs per disc. So, burnable Blu-ray or watch Blu-ray movies but it also means I have an extra set of serial a.k.a. stuff that I can plug one of these SSDs into. So we'll just unplug the power and data from the BDRE drive and plug that into the SSD and run it loose while transferring the data over. Don't have to make a mess of anything. Then we just find out what the heck, which one of these is the games drive, because they're all 2 terabytes nowadays. Oops.
Epic fail.
Little McDonald's toy of an SSD. Hey, but if it does the trick and gets like 400 to 500 transfer rates versus mechanical drives, let's just plug it into the extra plugs. This work light isn't working out as well as I thought it would. Yeah, let's plug it into those spare plugs. There, see? Light as a feather. The cables are probably heavier than this stupid drive is. Alright, let's turn it on, minus the Blu-ray drive, and let's transfer some data over. Contact! And thanks to the wonders of film, you don't even have to know that I never put the back panel back on. Oh, wait.
Epic fail.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say back panel? I meant side panel. Sorry, this thing's like a giant head cold right now. So, do pardon me if I'm a little out of it, because I kinda am. Why the heck am I messing with computers when I feel this way? 'Cause it's fun! I hate when I answer my own questions.
Epic fail.
Oh, look, it sees the drive. That's a good start. Let's download the utility for this thing and, make sure there isn't some firmware update we have to install first. Happy Monday! Well, I rightly predicted that copying over a terabyte of data off of a mechanical hard drive would take most of the night, so I just got some sleep and kept this thing going. Alright, let's get that mechanical drive out of there. It's finally done copying. And just like that, Monolith is now one step closer to eliminating mechanical drives and many sources of moving parts inside the system. The Seagate Barracuda is actually from May of 2020, so I didn't even have it very long. This will go to the Dellasaurus and give the Dellasaurus 2 terabytes of game storage space. Now, this is interesting because now that I have 4 matching sticks of RAM XMP enabled and applied some timings automatically, although they're still registering as 2133, so I don't know. Either way, 32 gigs, good way to give this thing a proper send-off, and we're one step closer to eliminating mechanical drives from this system once and for all. Only the data array is left. So we're going to test out that silicon power and see how good it is, and maybe consider looking into replacing the mechanical drives later on. Or just do it for the next system, one of those two. We're moving to M2 for things anyways. 2 terabytes serial a.k.a. SSD for under $100. That's definitely a nice mature price point for that level of storage these days, versus what SSDs were when I paid $270 for 160 gigs back in 2010, 2011. Oh man, oh man. So let's get out of the BIOS here and let's actually take a look at some kilowatt numbers for how this system runs, and probably make it not look so blanked out like this. Alright, let's kilowatt test this and see what kind of wattage ranges we get. Contact! Not going to be much for noise because I have the fans turned all the way down. I know it cracks 100 watts when it's going full blast. How much does it ramp down to though when it's done loading stuff? I think it goes down even lower when drives turn off. 80s, 80s, it's loading Windows right now. 80s. Almost to the point where we typed in the password. Almost 200 watts like Tuxedo used to do. How come there's no sound? I think I might have broke the speaker trying to get it realigned. I'll have to plug it back in. 119. Yeah, I think I bugged out the USB speaker. 173. Let's turn off the desktop icons. Give me a nice clean view of the screen. 126, 123, 80, 744, no, 74.4. That's just flying around all over the place now. Alright, let's wait for things to sit for a bit and some drives to turn off, and let's see how low it goes. Actually, no, that wouldn't be accurate. Alright, now we're dipping to the 50s now. that wouldn't be accurate because I'm curious what removing the drives would do. So we're hitting the 40s. Back in 2010 or so, I had laptops that ran at 40 watts. So once it's done loading stuff and it's doing only light tasks, it'll dip way down, which is what I'm looking for with these hippie chip computers and stuff. Oh yay, something's running. Oh, the sound is glitched out. Just close that out. The sound is glitched out, so yeah, I did glitch out the speakers. It's not registering the sound device properly. So it is hitting the 40s when things stop. Now let's pull the plug on the 2 remaining mechanical drives and see how low that goes. I think it'll hit 30s. Just more of a motivation in order to, what is it? Get rid of the remaining mechanical drives. Yeah, this is messing me. Oh, 39 watts. So we can dip into the 30s. But what happens if we remove those mechanical drives? Power is disconnected from the 2 remaining mechanical drives. Use the old hard drive as a stand for the camera. Contact! Again, barely any noise. Some folks are like, well, why are you so obsessed with power efficiency and hippie chips and stuff? Because the computing rival to gaming PCs these days is things like smartphones and laptops. You're talking low-power devices that can give you a desktop experience at a fraction of the watts of a lot of gaming PCs from yesteryear. That's working again. I'll get signed back in here. My rubber dome keyboard off to the side, and let's keep an eye on these wattages. There's no power to the drives, they never spun up, so this is a sneak preview of what it's going to look like when there are no more mechanical drives in the system. How much lower does it go? Does spinning the drives mean when we get rid of these things we can dip down into the 20s or something? I'm just curious. What I'm looking for is a system that ramps up the power when we're playing games, and then drops way the heck down when we're just browsing the web or checking email or something. The difference between desktop and gaming or making videos and stuff like that. Previously with Tuxedo, yeah, installed. Previously with Tuxedo and the 1090T, it wasn't very good at that sort of thing. Oh, we are dipping into the 30s now. So this just goes to show, just the wattage contributions of the mechanical action of mechanical drives, and just what kind of what they can do in terms of the tax, so to speak, on the system. Then, of course, fans do the same thing. So yeah, you get yourself a system that only draws the power when it needs to, and it runs cool the rest of the time. Then it'll just ramp way the heck down, and you'll have essentially a laptop that can play games when it's time to play games. So yeah, we're getting into the 30s. And I imagine when there's no more background CPU, we can look at like 20-something watts. For comparison, Dellasaurus Rex with integrated graphics and no graphics card will dip into the 20s for wattage while running. So, I mean, this can ramp up when the power is needed, but look at how much it's dropping with no mechanical drives. Down to 30 watts when just browsing the desktop. This is why I want to pursue a completely solid-state machine with less moving parts and slower spinning fans that doesn't need as much cooling. Because, I mean, this just, well, it is what it is. There's temp sensors that can sound alarms and stuff if the processor or the graphics card gets too hot, but, just pursue this stuff. Okay, I can barely speak coherently here, so let's move on. Now for the polar opposite of what we were trying to do earlier. Let's slam the heck out of the system by starting Hogwarts Legacy and see why we needed all that new stuff. Alright, ready? There it goes. Frame rate's dropping. Does it crack 200 watts? The transient spikes will probably not show up on a kilowatt. Those are incredibly short bursts of power. The problem with those bursts, though, is they often trip the overcurrent protection and stuff. Well, that's not bad. Basically an incandescent light bulb when preparing the shaders. Guess I'm gonna need the keyboard for this, aren't I? I've been using my ESO controls in Hogwarts Legacy since I'm so used to ESO. Yeah, hanging around the 100 mark. Tuxedo in Skyrim with the older graphics cards and processors used to crack 200 watts when gaming. Let's see what this thing can do. Skylake i7. The next processor, if the 8000 Ryzens aren't interesting for me, will be a Ryzen 9 7900, the hippie chip. Alright, ready? Let's see what this does. We'll go to Hogsmeade, too. Oh, this is a room of requirement, but the most CPU-intensive part of the game is Hogsmeade. 150 watts. Well, I'm getting a full 60 FPS. That's nice.
Proud of all the potions you brewed.
Oh, the surround sound's broken. That's right, because I only have stereo speakers. Oh, you can't see the screen. What am I doing? Alright, let me load up the, maybe you could stream this now, the 32 gigs of RAM. Let me go to Hogsmeade and advance the time to daytime. That should use more power, because that's the CPU slammer part of the game. Interesting, less stuttering. I think some of the stuttering is things loading into RAM and stuff. So if you have more RAM, you have less loading.
Now?
Alright, let's see here. I'm getting 40 FPS. It's basically Hogwarts Legacy is the new Morrowind. It's a game that I'll play because it's got an interesting setting. I got advanced to daytime. Terrible sound, too. Alright, daytime. People walking around, higher CPU usage, 30 FPS. Yeah, heading towards the 200 watt mark. Can we crack it?
Anything hot.
Rebellion.
Nope. No amount of graphical thingies on the screen has taken us past 180 watts.
My plan is to have a fire.
Well, not that bad, if I do say so myself, considering Tuxedo used to crack 200 watts with Skyrim. So, chug, 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 chug. 40 frames per second, just like when I played Morrowind back on my Athlon 2000 back in the day. Whatever, man. Alright, we're back in business. Let's put this thing back together, the blue Darth Vader box that it is, and let's set it back up. We're going to do some Dellasaurus tinkering next for the next chapter of this story. One envelope left over here, just a Warrky cable. With the new graphics card, there's more use of DisplayPort as opposed to HDMI, so looking to convert everything over to DisplayPort cables and stuff like that. Now that I know the difference between the newer DisplayPort standards and HDMI, so let's see what this looks like. Well, this is nice packaging. It's basically DisplayPort on one end, HDMI on the other end. Nice little braided carpet cable, essentially. This is going to be my new main cable going from the computer to the TV. There's an older, more plasticky cable that I'm going to relegate to something else, but eventually I want to have all DisplayPort cables plugging into this thing. Save HDMI for when it comes over to the project area. Okay, Monolith is back in its usual spot. It's nice to have a working computer again. The next chapter in this little story of ours involves the Dellasaurus. There we go, this magnifying light kind of makes things kind of cozy. Just gotta stop bumping into it with the camera rig. Either way, it's been a while since we've done anything with this. Last go around we just barely got this 1060 in here. Barely, had to buy some cables to modify a few things in order to get it to fit. And of course we upgraded to a EVGA 600 bronze power supply. So, I imagine with the recent upgrade in Monolith, one of the first things that's gone through some of you folks' heads is Dellasaurus RTX, right? We've got a spare graphics card, we've got a spare power supply, make the move, right? Unfortunately, no. As we found out since getting this thing, one of the biggest problems with going the Dellasaurus route is space. You gotta watch your graphics card length. Here's the EVGA 2060, and it would crash into the metal cage. So whereas the Asus 1060 was able to just barely fit, and I had to swap cables to get it to fit, the 2060 is not going in. So, yeah, I wasn't paying attention to graphics card length when I upgraded to RTX, and now it has come back to bite me. Oh well. Well then, time to take our consolation prize and upgrade the games drive in this thing to 2 terabytes. There, I swapped it out. No, seriously, I swapped out the hard drive. Really? You folks think I'm faking it. You really do. Just because there's a little Seagate with a green label in the front. Yes, it's a Seagate Barracuda Compute, but it's 1 terabyte, and the manufacture date, where the heck is it? Is 2017. It's kind of sad, really, because I remember, when I'd get years out of hard drives, and now I'm just getting rid of them because I'm getting better stuff, and SSDs are finally getting more affordable. What am I going to do with all these remaining mechanical drives to finish running them into the ground? Obviously use them as places for game installs on other systems, but you know what? Let's hold off on taking that where it's going to go and just fire up the Dellasaurus, just for the hell of it. The Dellasaurus Sandy Bridge i7 GTX 1060, the sort of thing that you might put together on a budget and then see how far it goes. I know people call it Dell Optiplex builds, but in reality, they're Dellasauruses. What else are you going to call something like this? This is technically a 10-year-old computer now. It's just that it's got the same architecture as my Skylake, just older and slower. Let's see what this thing can do. Alright, let's see how that drive hooked up and everything, and get this thing ready for prime time. Of course, I said that last time, but I have some more concrete plans for these secondary systems so they don't sit here not being used for months or years on end. Classic Dellasaurus stuff. And I like how everything matches with the blue on everything, unlike its successor. Well, if you're wondering why it was such a cool thing that Monolith, with more drives and fans and stuff, was making it down into the 40s and 30s when not doing anything, here's the Dellasaurus at 40 watts when not really doing anything. Just running Task Manager to verify that the CPU's not hardly doing anything. Oh yeah, this thing, man. It's been a fun computer to have, and just to see what it can still handle. But I haven't been doing enough of the latter, which is one of the reasons why this year I want to set up a way to use these computers like a console over by Monolith and stream them struggling with games and stuff. Now, I could keep making videos and like copy Greenham's formula or something like that if I really wanted to, but why not just utilize the streaming aspect of things here in order to get this done? And back to the dark mode aesthetic here. Well, this has been pretty fun, upgrading Monolith and whatnot, but I want to split off what's next into another video, so this one doesn't drag on too long. This is primarily about Monolith, but yes, we are at the final version of 2010's Monolith before we look at a potential upgrade when the Ryzen 8000 series launches, but everything is going to be up in the air for a while. For now, though, it'll be a nice final lap for Monolith as we know it. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.